Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles, the great millstone, who are teaching us truth and sincerity. And a shout out to Yakians out there on the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Braka Dum. So, while you got the distraction news going on, you know, PG&E cutoffs happened last week, and a lot more happening towards the mark of the beast as well, the RFID implant this week. But you're being distracted by the so-called impeachment trials, you know, so, you know, the real shit that's going on, such as, you know, Gomer invading Syria. Well, on the top of the hour, President Bashar al-Assad to al-Fahad, Erdogan's regime aggression on our country is blatant invasion to which Syria will respond. And if you hadn't noticed, though, that the Syrian Arab army has been moving into a lot of those places that was originally occupied by the United Snakes. And, of course, now the Kurds have real protection from the Syrian Arab army, who is now taking control. You see, this war could have been over a long time ago, and they would have had the protection of the Syrian Arab army had they not made a deal with Esau. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad received on Thursday Iraqi National Security Advisor Fallah al-Fahad, who conveyed to him a message from Iraqi Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi. The message concentrated on means of developing relations between the two countries and promoting the standing cooperation between them to higher levels and broader domains, whether in issues of combating terrorism or in security of borders, in light of recent developments in addition to the economic cooperation and opening border crossings between Syria and Iraq. And of course, if you hadn't noticed lately, a lot of the refugees have been fleeing into Iraq as well. So, you know, the two countries are actually trying to meet with each other, you know, to deal with the problem, which is Turkish aggression, aka Gomer and all his bands. Talks during the meeting dealt with the situation on the regional and international arenas, as President Bashar al-Assad affirmed that external greed in countries of our region has never stopped throughout history, adding that the Turkish criminal aggression launched by Erdogan's regime on our country comes in the context of this greed, whatever it has raised of false motives. So it is a blatant invasion and a clear aggression to which Syria has responded in more than one place through striking its agents and terrorists, and Syria will respond and confront it with all its forms in any region of the Syrian territory through all available legitimate means. Al-Fahad, for his part, underlined that both countries are going on in their joint work at various levels to realize the interest of the Iraqi and Syrian brotherly peoples and achieve security and peace in the two countries. So in other words, you know, they know that the United States was never there to help, but rather to aid and protect the terrorists. And it's also on press TV. Syria will respond through all legitimate means to Turkish aggression. And again, you know, this is probably a good portion of what I already read, but President Bashar al-Assad says the Damascus government will respond through all legitimate means available to the ongoing offensive by Turkish soldiers and allied Takfiri militants against Kurdish forces in the northern part of the war-battered Arab country. So in other words, you see how, you know, there's a little bit different wording there, which is, you know, why I kind of read from both Syrian Arab News Agency and Press TV. You know, because the Takfiri terrorists have always been protected by the United States. During a meeting with the visiting Iraqi National Security Advisor Fallah al-Fahad in Damascus on Thursday, Assad said foreign schemes in the Middle East region have been foiled throughout history, and the Turkish criminal aggression launched by President Erdogan's administration on Syria fails within such plots. No matter what false slogans could be made up for the Turkish offensive in a flagrant invasion and aggression, Syria has frequently hit Turkish-backed proxies and terrorists in more than one place. Syria will respond to the assault and confront it anywhere within the Syrian territory through all legitimate means available, the Syrian leader said. The meeting, also attended by Syrian ambassador to Iraqi Satam al-Danda. Assad's remarks came after an unknown source in the Syrian Ministry of Foreign and Expertise earlier on Thursday strongly condemned the ongoing ground offensive by Turkish forces and their allied militants against Kurdish regions of the country. The source said the treacherous Turkish aggression is the outcome of the expansionist ambitions and illusions of Erdogan's regime, and it affirms that the regime is classified among terrorist groups to which it has provided all forms of support. The offensive deals a heavy blow to the efforts aimed at finding a solution to the crisis in Syria. It makes, therefore, the Turkish regime lose its position as a guarantor of the Astana peace process, as its aggression completely contradicts the principles and decisions of the process. So, as you can see, though, again, we know that this blood spill is exactly what the United States wanted, So, fuckface Pence went over there, to deal with Erdogan, pretending that he disagrees. Well, they agree. Hey, they really agree, Hey, why not? They've done this before. Because remember, Saddam Hussein was their ally. And look at this, man. The so-called Operation Desert Storm ended after a deal between Iraq and the United States, because Saddam Hussein was still their ally. They only used Saddam Hussein as a puppet to attack Iran. Turkish language CNN Turk television news network said Turkey had rejected U.S. President Trump's appeal to reach a deal to avoid conflict in northeastern Syria, and his letter to Erdogan, dated October 9, was thrown in the trash. Well, of course, because you and I both know, though, that Turkey is calling the shots, and the United States just doesn't want to get involved, just like, President Bush did with, Saddam Hussein when he launched his war against the Kurds. On Monday, Trump imposed sanctions on Turkey over Ankara's military operation northeast of Syria and called for an immediate ceasefire. Yeah, well, the United States caused this war, make no mistake about it, and this is exactly what they had wanted, was instability. They never wanted the Kurds to unite with Bashar al-Assad. See, what makes Bashar al-Assad different than Saddam Hussein is Bashar al-Assad actually does want to protect the Kurdish people. Saddam Hussein launched a war against them, so that's the only difference with this betrayal. In fact, the Kurds were always better off with Bashar al-Assad protecting them, because he can actually handle Turkey. On October 9, Turkish military forces and Ankara-backed militants, which are the terrorists, launched a long-threatened cross-border invasion of northeastern Syria in a declared attempt to push Kurdish militants from the People's Protection Units away from the border areas, which you've seen them arming terrorist groups before they even went into Syria, because you've seen that on the RNU news reports, which are in a previous video that I forwarded. Ankara views the U.S.-backed YPG as a terrorist organization tied to the homegrown Kurdistan's Workers' Party, which has been seeking an autonomous Kurdish region in the Turkey since 1984, which you and I both know that was never going to happen to begin with. But it was a group that the United States could exploit. That's how they led. The Kurdish-led administration in northeastern Syria says the Turkish offensive has killed 218 civilians, including 18 children, since it started. The fighting has also wounded more than 650 people. Turkish authorities say 20 people have been killed in Turkey by bombardment from Syria, including 8 people who were killed in a mortar attack on the town of Nazaman by YPG militants on Friday. And here's more. Turkey's Syria incursion displaces over 300,000 monitor. So, looks a lot like Desert Storm did. The only difference is now the Kurds, are actually going to who they should have gone to, which is the Syrian Arab Army. Turkey's offensive against Kurdish-controlled areas of northeastern Syria has displaced over 300,000 people, a report says. Ramu Abdul Rahman, head of the so-called Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said on Thursday that the rise in the number of people forced to flee was due to a fresh wave of displacement over the past few days from around Tal Abad and Kobane and in Hasakah province. He said that the most displaced people tried to move in with relatives in safer areas. Some were sleeping rough in orchards, and others in some of the 40 schools that have been turned into emergency shelters. On Thursday, the ninth day of the onslaught, Turkish forces heavily pounded areas in the border town of Ras Al Ain. The UK-based group said that the Turkish forces had control over half of the Kurdish town. There have been intensive airstrikes over Ras Al Ain over the past 3 days, Abdul Rahman said. So anyways, this is kind of what it looked like when the Syrian Arab army had taken control of some of these areas. They were happy to see the Syrian government because they're the only ones that are going to protect the Kurds. The United States was never protected the Kurds to begin with. They were always going to exploit them as a means to stay in Syria. In the meantime, Syrian government forces are expanding their presence in the northern cities to prevent the Turkish army from gaining grounds. The troops have entered several cities and towns which are under the control of the Kurds, sending a wave of delight across the region. They're happy now because they finally got real protection from someone that actually really does care about them. These pieces of shit, the red Hebrew Edomites, don't give two flying fucks about them, but Bashar al-Assad actually does. Unlike the way it was with Saddam Hussein back then. You know, because they had it the worst, man. Turkey was firing on them, and Iraq was firing on them back then. But actually, these leaders actually care about their people. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said on Thursday that Germany would not deliver any weapons to Turkey under current circumstances. So this is what's leading to the beast hating the whore. Adding that she had urged Turkey several times to end its military offensive in northern Syria. So you see how Gomer and all his bands and you know, the EU are now all starting to break apart, but they all have one thing in common. They hate the whore, Babylon the Great. In recent days, I have strongly urged Turkey to end its military operation against the Kurdish military, and I'm stressing that again now. Merkel told Germany's lower house of parliament in a humanitarian drama with huge geopolitical efforts, so Germany will not deliver any weapons to Turkey under the current conditions, she added. So again, you know, pretty much, man, the allies are all turning against each other. Ankara views the U.S.-backed YPG as a terrorist organization tied to the homegrown Kurdistan's Workers' Party, PKK. Again, you and I both know that what's happened, though, is that they've turned to the rightful government of Syria. Developments led the Kurds to reach out to the Damascus government for support, reaching an agreement with Syrian troops to enter towns near the border with Turkey. And see, this is the news that's blocked out by the so-called impeachment trials, the news that they don't want you talking about. But, you know, the alternative media, it's here. So that's what's going on in Syria, the news they don't want you talking about.